Hello everyone, it's me, Clayton. I just got back from watching Ghostbusters Afterlife, directed by Jason Reitman and starring McKenna Grace, Finn Wolfhard, Carrie Coon, and Paul Rudd. Now, when it comes to the Ghostbusters film franchise, it's one of the most nostalgic franchises out of any of the ones that came out of the 80s, where Bill Murray, Harold Ramis, Dan Aykroyd, and Ernie Hudson became absolute icons after making one of the most beloved comedies of all time. And also a sequel that's okay. And also a cartoon series that a lot of people from the 80s and 90s remember fondly. And after a failed attempt at making an all-female reboot in 2016, this film not only happens to pay tribute to the Ghostbusters, but it also happens to let a whole bunch of new Ghostbusters, who happen to be kids, take the star this time. So let's get to the story, shall we? The story takes place about 30 years after the events of Ghostbusters 2, where Egon's daughter, played by Carrie Coon, is moving her family over to Somerville, which is a Oklahoma town in the middle of nowhere, where her brainy daughter Phoebe, played by McKenna Grace, happens to find that this farm has more to it than meets the eye, and happens to find a legacy left by Egon. All while her brother Trevor, played by Finn Wolfhard, gets a crush on a girl in town, and Phoebe happens to befriend a local podcaster, literally named Podcast. So as these kids figure out that this town was actually built by Ivo Shandor, they have to find their connection to the Ghostbusters and save the world. That's all I'll say about the story, though. The story here really does feel like a natural continuation of the first two Ghostbusters films, especially since it explains what happened to the original Ghostbusters cast, where they are now, and it happens to deal with the death of Harold Ramis very tastefully, in my opinion. On top of that, it has tons of fan service and references to those who love the original films. Everything from proton packs, to ghost traps, to the Ecto-1, to all new interesting things with those said things, like a gunner seat for the Ecto-1, the mobile RC ghost trap, and there's tons of lines that are direct references to that film, to the point where the main antagonist is even one that returns from the first film. Plus, it actually explains a bit more about Ivo Shandor, the architect behind this town and behind the apartment building from the first film. Granted, he's a bit different than how he's portrayed in the video game, but considering that this film is more of a continuation than that was, I'm fine with this being the official version. On top of that, it has a lot of great cameos from the Ghostbusters cast, as you've already seen in the trailers, not only Annie Potts, but also of the original Ghostbusters. And it really feels like Jason Reitman not only made this film in a way that reflects his father's style, Ivan Reitman, but it feels like a great send-off for Harold Ramis as Egon. Not only is the whole film built around his family and built around the end of his story, but it also happens to be in memory of him, which, if this was the movie made in 2016, I think people would have been a lot more happier with it, especially since the comedy in this movie, while it's not as pronounced as the previous film, certainly is a bit more effective, especially since it makes these kids very endearing in a Goonies sort of way, in my opinion, especially McKenna Grace. She definitely is a reflection of Egon in many ways, with her braininess, her lack of emotion during certain scenes. I mean, it's implied that her and Egon are on the spectrum, but it's never outright stated. And even characters like Podcast, you'd think would be annoying for the name, he happens to be a really funny version of the podcaster type of character. And on top of that, the whole film generally feels like a nostalgic throwback, but also a way to honor a legacy in a way that not many films do today. There's no attempt to make the Ghostbusters seem lame or to insult the original actors. It feels as heartfelt and as well-intentioned as possible, and for that I've got to respect it. Granted, there are a few things I didn't like about the film. It takes a little while to get going, and there are maybe a few too many repeating elements. But aside from that, I do feel it's a must-watch for Ghostbusters fans. And even for those who are new to the franchise, I'm sure you'll find something to get out of it. That's what I'm going to give Ghostbusters Afterlife an 8 out of 10. See you next time.